What do you do when you still love your ex and you have to stay in touch?
Whether you're co parenting, working together, or just can't fully cut ties, we'll show you how to create emotional distance without becoming cold or bitter.
Hi, friends, and welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome to our community. I'm Tehrina Terry.
And I'm Joel Terry. We're licensed therapists with over 30 years of experience between us, here to help you build healthy relationships.
And we do this through teaching you the ABCs of lasting love: attachment, boundaries, and communication. Really, all things relationships.
So if that sounds good and you like that kind of content, please subscribe to our channel and like this video.
This is the final part of our 3-part series on healing when you still love an ex. And we're getting advanced today because we're addressing how to heal when, due to life circumstances, you can't completely cut contact.
In the first 2 parts, we followed Emma's journey of letting go of Michael, an avoidant ex-partner. And today, we're introducing a new dimension to Emma's story. What if she and Michael had already had a child together, making no contact impossible? Because we've had this situation come up in the comment section of our videos several times, we wanted to include this scenario.
So now imagine that Emma and Michael share a 6-year-old daughter, which means that despite the pain of the breakup, they need to maintain some form of communication for co-parenting.
And this is a reality for so many of you, whether you're co-parenting, working in the same company, share the same friend group, or live in a small town where running into each other is inevitable.
So today we're showing you how to protect your heart while still handling these necessary connections with maturity and grace.
For Emma, the strategies we discussed in our previous videos were helpful, but they needed to be adapted for her co-parenting situation. She couldn't simply block Michael on all platforms when they needed to coordinate schedules for their daughter.
And this created a unique challenge. Each time they communicated about their daughter, Emma would find herself analyzing Michael's tone, hoping for signs that he missed her or regretted the breakup.
And this is such a common experience. When you can't completely separate, those necessary points of contact can keep reopening the emotional wound and prolonging the healing process.
For Emma, even a simple text about picking up their daughter could trigger hours of rumination, replaying the conversation, looking for hidden meanings, or drafting and redrafting responses to sound casual, yet open to reconciliation.
And this is what we call the contact illusion, the false belief that ongoing communication means there's still hope for the relationship. And it's one of the biggest obstacles to healing when you can't go completely no contact.
The first breakthrough for Emma was accepting a difficult truth. Contact about co-parenting wasn't the same as intimacy. Michael could be a responsible co-parent while still being emotionally unavailable as a partner.
This distinction was painful but necessary. It helped Emma stop interpreting Michael's responsible parenting behaviors as signs he was wanting to reconcile.
Another challenge Emma faced was the roller coaster of emotions that came with in-person interactions during child handoffs. Seeing Michael, sometimes looking good, sometimes being kind, would reignite her hope and set back her healing.
These moments are especially difficult because they trigger what we call euphoric recall, where your brain selectively remembers the positive aspects of an experience while temporarily forgetting the problems that followed. This concept is particularly common when working with overcoming addiction, which is what these relationships feel like.
For Emma, these brief encounters would sometimes erase months of painful memories, leaving her questioning her decision to end the relationship. Maybe it wasn't that bad, she would think. Maybe we could try again.
And this is your brain's attachment system fighting to reconnect. And it's incredibly powerful. But it doesn't mean you should act on these feelings.
The key insight that helped Emma was recognizing that these intense emotions were temporary. By tracking her feelings before, during, and after interactions with Michael, she could see how her perception of the relationship would temporarily shift during contact, then gradually return to a more balanced view.
And this awareness didn't make the feelings disappear, but it did help Emma stop making decisions based on these temporary emotional highs. She could say to herself, I'm feeling pulled towards him right now, but I know from experience that this feeling will shift in a few hours.
So if you can't create complete external boundaries through no contact, how do you protect your heart? For Emma, the answer was developing strong internal boundaries.
Internal boundaries are the emotional lines we draw within ourselves. They determine what we share, how we interpret others' behavior, and what meaning we assign to interactions.
The first internal boundary that helped Emma was deciding not to share emotionally
Mm.
vulnerable information with Michael. Their communications would focus solely on their daughter's needs, schedules, and well being.
And this didn't mean that Emma became cold or robotic. She remained kind and respectful. But she stopped sharing details about her day, her feelings, or her personal life beyond what was directly relevant to co parenting.
For Emma, this looked like transitioning from texts like, I had a hard day at work, but taking Lily to the park helped me feel better. She misses you. To more boundaried communication like, Lily had a great time at the park today. She's ready for pickup at 6 p.m.
The second internal boundary was making conversations task based rather than relationship based. Instead of open ended check ins that could easily drift into personal territory, Emma focused on specific co parenting tasks and decisions.
So when Michael would occasionally venture into more personal conversations, Emma developed a simple redirection strategy. Acknowledge briefly, then return to the co parenting topic. Yes, work has been busy. About Lily's school project, do you have the supplies she needs for this weekend?
And a third powerful internal boundary was delaying responses when emotions were high. Emma gave herself permission to say, I'll get back to you on that, when Michael raised a co parenting question that triggered strong feelings.
And this wasn't about being difficult or withholding. It was about giving herself the emotional space to respond from her centered self rather than from her triggered attachment system.
For instance, when Michael mentioned wanting to take their daughter to visit his new girlfriend's family, Emma's immediate internal reaction was jealousy and hurt. But instead of responding from that place, she said, Let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you tomorrow.
This time buffer allowed her to process her initial emotional response with her therapist or a trusted friend, and then respond based on what was best for their daughter rather than about reacting to the pain of the new relationship.
And technology can be incredibly helpful here. For many of our co parenting clients, dedicated co parenting apps like Our Family Wizard, Talking Parents, or App Close create structure and boundaries by keeping all communication in one place.
These apps reduce emotional reactivity by keeping the focus on schedules, expenses, and child related communications. One even has a tone meter that flags emotionally charged language to give you an opportunity to pause and reflect before you send it.
For Emma, using a co parenting app was transformative. It helped compartmentalize the relationship. Co parenting communications stayed in the app, which she could check at designated times rather than being constantly available by text.
This structure protected Emma from the anxiety of waiting for Michael's responses or checking her phone constantly for messages from him.
Remember, the goal isn't to never feel anything when you interact with your ex. The goal is to create enough emotional containment that these necessary interactions don't repeatedly derail your healing process.
Even with strong internal boundaries, Emma still struggled with the grief of seeing Michael regularly while knowing that their romantic relationship was over. This is where more nuanced emotional work became essential.
In our previous video, we introduced the concept of relating to different parts of yourself with compassion. For Emma, this became even more important in her co parenting situation.
Emma identified that she had a longing part that would get activated during handoffs with Michael. This part would notice how good he looked, remember inside jokes they used to share, and start building fantasies about reconciliation.
And instead of judging this part or trying to suppress it, Emma learned to acknowledge it with kindness, saying to this part, I see you're feeling pulled towards him again. That makes sense given our history. But we need to remember why this relationship wasn't working for us.
This compassionate self dialogue might sound strange at first, but it's incredibly powerful. It allows you to honor your feelings without being controlled by them.
And for Emma, this internal conversation helped her move from being hijacked by her emotions to being able to observe them with some distance. I'm feeling this, but I don't have to act on it.
Another powerful practice Emma developed was using grief rituals to process the ongoing loss. Since she couldn't make a clean break, She needed ways to continually release the emotions that built up through their interactions.
One ritual that helped was voice memo journaling after handoffs. She would record her honest feelings about seeing Michael, the longing, the anger, the sadness, and then delete the recording. This gave her feeling somewhere to go besides back into rumination.
Emma also created a symbolic closure ritual that she could repeat whenever old feelings resurfaced. She would write a letter expressing everything she wished she could say to Michael, read it aloud to herself, and then she'd burn it, watching the smoke carry the words away.
The final piece that transformed Emma's healing journey was building her emotional anchor outside of her relationship with Michael.
When you're in a relationship with someone avoidant, you often become hyper focused on them, monitoring their moods, anticipating their needs, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering their withdrawal.
And this hypervigilance means your emotional center becomes located on the other person rather than yourself. Their mood determines your mood. Their approval determines your worth.
So for Emma, even after the breakup, she was still emotionally anchored to Michael. His brief text responses or tone during handoffs would determine her emotional state for days.
The real transformation began when Emma started deliberately building alternative emotional anchors, people and practices to help ground her regardless of what was happening with Michael.
First, Emma reconnected with friends who had taken a back seat during her relationship. She started a weekly dinner with two close friends where she could be completely honest about her struggles without judgment.
This support system gave her somewhere to process her feelings about co parenting interactions before they could spiral into rumination or unhealthy hope.
Second, Emma began working with a therapist who specialized in attachment issues. This relationship became a secure base from which she could explore her patterns and practice new ways of relating.
The therapeutic relationship itself became a template for what secure attachment feels like: consistent, boundaried, and emotionally regulated.
Third, Emma developed a journaling practice centered around reconnecting with herself. Rather than journaling about Michael, she wrote about her own values, dreams, and needs that had been neglected during their relationship.
This practice helped Emma rediscover parts of herself that had been submerged in trying to make the relationship work with an avoidant partner.
And finally, Emma built a relationship with a part of herself that she called her wise self, the clear seeing, compassionate voice that could hold the complexity of still loving Michael while still choosing a different path.
She would regularly dialogue with this wise self through journaling, meditation, and asking questions like, what do I need right now? What would truly support my well being in this situation?
This internal relationship became an anchor that didn't depend on Michael's behavior or the status of their co parenting interactions.
And for Emma, these alternative anchors gradually reduced the emotional impact of seeing Michael. While she still felt momentary pangs of sadness or longing, they no longer derailed her entire day or week.
Let's get to the heart of it. You may still love them, but now you're learning to love you too, and that changes everything. The journey of healing while maintaining no contact isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about creating enough emotional space to honor your feelings while still moving forward. There's a freedom that comes when you stop measuring your worth by someone else's ability to consistently show up for you. When your center of gravity shifts from their validation to your own inner knowing.
The truth is, continued contact with someone you still love is one of the hardest emotional terrains to navigate. But with compassion for yourself and clear boundaries, it becomes manageable. And in time, what once felt impossible, seeing them without being emotionally devastated, becomes your new normal. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring for yourself with the same devotion you once gave to them.
What's one strategy you found helpful for maintaining boundaries while co parenting or staying in contact with an ex? Share in the comments. Your experience could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.
If you found this series valuable, download our relationship guide for must-haves and deal breakers using the link in the description below. It's a powerful tool for clarifying what you truly need in your next relationship.
Or take our boundaries and attachment style quiz to discover your animal archetype and receive personalized strategies for healthier relationships.
Your time is valuable. Thank you for spending some of it with us today. If you found this helpful and have a friend that could benefit from what we talked about, please share.
Subscribe and take care of your heart. And remember, you're not alone. We're all in this
Together.
together.